What is the best gambit in chess that's not even really a gambit? What is one of the best openings ever? Magnus Carlsen and many top players have used this opening, and so can you. You may already be thinking, so what? How is this video going to be useful for me? I'm going to show you how you can also play this opening. I will go through many games explaining the key ideas in each position. By the end, you will understand reasonably well how to play the Queen's Gambit from the white side. We're going to see many games in this video. First up, we will see Magnus Carlsen in the first two games, and then we will see Pragg, a top Indian prodigy. So, first up, let's introduce the position. d4, d5, and now c4. This is the Queen's Gambit, offering a trade. This is what we're going to focus on in this video. Assuming black takes the pawn. This is called the Queen's Gambit accepted. And now this is the line, the variation we're going to look at, where white gets 2 pawns in the center. As you can see, there are so many arrows, but I'm going to make this video concise. I'm going to look at the most popular options. The green arrows show the pawn moves, they are the really good ones. The blue arrows are the passive looking pawn moves. We're not going to look at them, because if you play this or this, you're still going to have the same next move, where black hasn't really contested for the center. This move isn't great. And then we have 2 red arrows which show the knight moves. Now I'm going to cut it down even further. This is the position we will look at. 3 key options. 3 key options where black strikes in the center and knight f6, and also this one. So 4 key options. So first up, we have Magnus Carlsen against Liem, one of the top players from Vietnam. Magnus gets the center. Now one way is for black to challenge the center, but Liem challenges it the other way. I've also played this from the black side. Magnus hits the knight and then gets the pawn back. Couple of options. Black can get the knight to c6, bishop f5, but Liem attacks the bishop. You can drop the bishop here, but bishop back to b3 keeps an eye on the f7 pawn. You could play bishop d3 if you want to set up a trap for your opponent. If queen takes pawn, then bishop b5 check and you win the queen. Do not fall for this trap in your own games, but you can set it up if you want. Let's go back a couple moves. Magnus keeps an eye on f7. Liem gets the bishop out the chain, now e6. Very important setup here. Do not fall for this plan. Do not block your own bishop, because that bishop can not really get in the game anymore. So bishop f5, e6, knight c6. You can see black is putting pressure in the center, and Magnus is actually defending the center. So 1, 2. Magnus is defending it 1, 2, 3. The other key idea in this middle game is the fact that Liem is controlling the square in front of the pawn. 1, 2, 3, and Magnus is controlling it twice. Oh, twice here. So the key square in this Queen's Gambit accepted turns out to be the d5 square. And the funny thing is, if we go back to move 2, that is really the square that was vacated. Bishop e7, both sides castle, and now a3, controlling the square. Magnus doesn't really want the knight coming to b4. So for example, with rook here, I think that's quite annoying. You've got a couple of options really. Knight can come in. The knight can actually come back here, 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 here. Black is now controlling that square 4 times. So Magnus stops it with a3. So look out for this plan in your own games. Stop the guy coming in to d5. However, Liem still has this option anyway. You're attacking this bishop, going to come into c4. Bishop drops back to c2. Magnus understands. This bishop is really dangerous, offers a trade, and Liem trades in this way. Take, take, and now d5. Something's gone wrong for him. White should not have this position. 2 very strong pawns in the center. If we go back a couple moves, when I saw this position, I was shocked. Why didn't Liem just take and then queen up? The blue arrows show the knights can still come in the center anyway. Green arrows show the 2 rooks, and then the yellow arrows we see the pawn break, perhaps undermining the structure with c5 or f6. I think black is totally fine. However, if we go back to this moment, this critical moment in the game where it just turns, because now Magnus gets a great position with d5, knight c4 coming up. This moment is the best move in the game, in my opinion, because I just didn't expect it. I thought bishop here, defend, but it's not actually great, because now 1, 2, 3. White might be in some trouble. So best move in the game, and perhaps vital. Bishop takes knight. I gave it double exclamation, because in a position like this where it's open, you don't expect anyone to just give up the bishop for a knight. Magnus plays this wonderful exchange. 2 pawns still controlling all these squares, restricting the bishop. But the point is, after this position, the blue arrows show, yeah, the 2 knights are much better than the knight and bishop. The queen is out, the 2 rooks come to the center. Those pawns continue to restrict. Really, in this position, the point is, these 2 knights are better than the knight and the bishop. And you know what? It's really about the fact that this knight isn't great. How so? This is how. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Difficult. Very, very difficult for the knight to come back in the game. Both sides rooks in the center. Now what? h4. Every top player and his dog and his cat have played this move. h4, getting another pawn or piece in the attack. h5, and now drop the queen back. The point is, we're going to attack the bishop, right? So Liem stops it. Now queen back to c1. Why? Because the queen now comes back to f4. Cool journey. 1, 2, 3. Near the king, generating an attack. Knight d7. In this position, you can see the green arrows show 1, 2, 3, stopping white playing b4. And guess what? Magnus still plays b4. It's still possible. You know your position. You know something's wrong when you've got 3 pieces stopping the move and the guy plays it. Take, take. Now, why can't the guy take? It's because Magnus can now win the bishop. Pause the video now or let the 3-second timer run. What can white play now to win this bishop? Queen attacks bishop, time to cut off the coordination. d6 just wins the piece. So going back a few moves here, bishop back to b6, and now check, and then hit the queen. If the queen retreats, and now another pawn break where it looks like it's not possible. 2 pawn breaks in this game. Magnus is coming through. By the way, in this position you can't take because knight d5. And if the queen comes up, that's the funny thing. The queen is now trapped. Going back a few moves, in this position, Le Quang just retreated the queen, and Magnus still played e6. The point is, the queen now attacks the pawn. After take, take, you attack the rook, rook attacks the knight. Le Quang is losing the knight. Rook moves away, the knight drops, offer a trade, take, take, game over. Everything's going to drop. That bishop is actually undefendable. The queen can't actually go anywhere to defend it. Morozevich, top Russian player versus Magnus Carlsen. This time he has it from the black side. Magnus can play any opening. Here we go again. That's the point of this video. The best gambit that is not even a gambit because we're going to get the pawn back anyway. c5, another popular option, perhaps. Maybe it's not the best. Well, let's see how. d5, get space, and now knight f6. Magnus challenges the center. Moro defends it with knight c3, now b5. Cool move. Because if you take, you take. And that's the thing, after this capture, you can actually throw in this accurate move. Throw in a check first. Then, the knight has to drop back, and now you take on e4. It's even better this way. If you block with the bishop, let's take it. and black is doing very well. G6, the bishop can come out, and black is ready to castle. And there's no pawn center. If we go back a few moves here, I mean, white had 2 pawns in the center, and all of a sudden it's gone. So don't get this move order wrong. After b5, you don't take, you go bishop f4. Because if you go b4 attacking the knight, we're coming in. It's too dangerous. You might stop it with knight a6, but queen a4 is just so dangerous. Threatening a beautiful double checkmate. Do not fall for this in your own games. And guess what? Set it up. Set up this beautiful trap. If black plays a nothing move, knight d6 is a wonderful, a beautiful double checkmate. Have you ever played a double checkmate in your own games? Let me know in the comments. Now, going back a few moves, no way would Carlsen fall for this. In this position, after bishop f4, queen a5, a4, opening up the rook. Knight takes e4, using the pin, but now knight e2. White is so far ahead in development. Turns out Moro, well, in this position, he just gave up the center pawn, which is a big deal, but now we defend the knight. Knight goes back to d6, and now we take, attacking the queen. It drops back, and now knight g3. Bishop can come in the game. Knight d7. Big decision by Moro to take, and then take. Check, and then take with the queen, I mean. Now, if we go back here, there's another option. We're going to go queen e2 first. And then bring the knight in. Do not give up the bishop for the knight, because this bishop is so strong. Something like this. And white has a great position. Bishop is going to recapture the pawn. It's very difficult for black to move. Now let's go back a few moves, back to the game. Here, knight g3, take, big decision by Moro, and now check and then take with the queen. Okay, Magnus goes h5, h4, attack the knight, but knight is going to come into the center anyway. Hit the queen. Over to a4, h3, keep it closed, and now c4. Lots of squares around the king. It's just so weak, really. There's no safe place for the king. Castle, and now knight d2. Class move by Moro. These are some of the most difficult moves in chess. It's a retreating move. Knight back, attacking the pawn. Now, if you play queen here, I don't think it matters. You just get the pawn back anyway. You just take. You can even go check first and then take. Nah, let's just get it. Check. You can take with the queen. Yeah, we're good. Queen or bishop, we're good. So class move by Moro. Knight back to d2. Knight takes c4. Take, take. Bishop f6. Rook a6. Hit the queen. And now class move coming up. b6. Using the pin on the a file. This is an absolute crush by Moro over Magnus. King out the way. Finally, the rooks get connected. If you saw the previous arrow here, I was just showing. If we look at this, it's move 23 and the rooks are not in the game. Whereas white has castled. Rook in the game. That rook has the potential to come in. It's a total crush. Rook e1, cool move. Threatening a discovered check. b7, hit the rook. Hit the rook, but also this. So annoying. Basically losing, really. You can't do this because you take. Can't take because you lose that. Game over, really. King out the way. It's a check. Take the bishop. Bishop g3 doesn't do anything. I think you can take this way. Can't take that way. What am I talking about? Pin. But he doesn't even take. Take the rook. There's nothing here. All squares covered. All squares covered. You can get a queen, but he just throws it in. Check. Blocks. Here, you can take. Oh, check. Get a queen next. So check. Check. Absolute crush over Carlsen. If you take, that drops. King moves out of the way, get a queen. So he just finishes off. Check. Take. And after check, game over. Magnus resigned, because after this, you now take with check, game over. You win everything. Pragg, one of the top Indian juniors, against Abdumalik, one of the top female players. 2 ways to strike in the center. There's a third way. b5. We strike on the queen side. The point of this move is you defend your extra pawn. In a dream situation, black is going to get all the pieces out and you're going to be up an extra pawn. Not today. No way. A4, we hit the pawn chain. C6 defend. And now what does Pragg do? He takes and then attacks the chain now. Queen b6 is possible. A6 is also possible, by the way. It's a very sharp line. I'm not going to talk about that today. Queen b6, knight d5, hit the queen, queen b7. When you look at this position, it just looks awful. Why is there queen on b7? Why is 2 pawns in the center? But this line is trending nowadays. It's actually all right for black, but it's so sharp. Beautifully sharp. Bishop f4. Do you remember in the previous game? This is a setup that Moro had against Magnus. So if you have the chance, use this setup in your own games as well. Knight d5 and bishop f4. Use this in the Queen's Gambit. e5. Hit the bishop. It's the only move. You might be thinking, why chuck a pawn? Well, for one move, you are delaying knight here. But the important thing is bishop b4 check could be dangerous in some lines. Take. This looks absolutely awful. Absolutely awful for black. Knight d7. And it's trending this position. You can't go check at the moment because king takes. King d8 I mean. So just to show, here, king d8. And now if you take, check. Game over. That's the amazing thing. I'm going to show this line again anyway. After check, the king comes up and checkmate all of a sudden. Imagine if you could set this opening trap in your own games. Go for it. Amazing trap, just checkmate all of a sudden. Let's go back a few moves. So we can't actually grab the rook yet. Pragg retrieves the bishop. Bishop b4 check is not possible because the knight still controls the square. That's going to be a key idea in these lines. Knight challenges the knight and the center. Check now, and here you still don't take. That's the funny thing, it's the same opening trap. Bishop b4 check, you have to block with the queen. You lose it, but if you don't, you get mated in the middle. Imagine if you could set this trap in your own games. So here you still can't take, defend. And here, to continue with the spirit of this position, we can actually sacrifice in the center. All these pieces are still on summer holiday. Take in the center, it's in the spirit. And now check, in the spirit again, getting pieces out. We don't take, we get the knight in the game. And I'm going to pause it there because it's too complicated for me. The knight can come in for a few checks. You can take it. Who knows, mate? Too complicated, and these guys are still on holiday. Let's go back a few moves. So here, Abdumalik actually decided to save her rook, but after knight a6, the rook is attacked by both the knight and the bishop. Rook defends knight. This square, please note, key idea in these lines, there is no check by her. Rook moves back in the corner, and now knight comes out. Just like we saw in previous positions. If white can control these squares for most of the game, then it's actually a great line. Remember in the first game we saw this, Magnus against Liem. Queen d2, knight f4, hit the queen, give up the bishop, take. And now let's keep going, hit the queen, drop the knight back. We can all blunder our queen in one move, defend, and now bishop out and break open the pawn chain. Stop h3, and now we break it open, take, and take. You may be thinking in this position, why didn't the guy take? Well, you can. It's just, you're just going to take it back, maybe knight, or just go rook c1 really. Just too much pressure. This pawn is always coming, is always falling. You're just coming in, there's another piece near the king. Game over. h3. Take. Hit the queen. And now, yeah, I mean, lots of arrows. I'm just showing so much control around the black king. Knight can come in later. This bishop can come in. This rook is in the game. But guess what? There's a surprise coming up. What if I was to say that Pragg actually lost this game? You might be thinking, what's he talking about? Oh dear. Let's pretend that didn't happen. Let's go back a few moves. Here. Queen c5. Hit the pawn. Hit the knight. You can't play this because backward moves are so good. You hit the rook. Rook, queen, attack the knight, game over. So after this moment, knight back. Bishop e5, take. King f1. And yeah, Abdumalik decided to give up the rook for the bishop, because this bishop is actually so strong just coming in later. Give it up. If you don't give it up, you got this fancy move, queen here, or even d6. That's pretty cool as well. This is a really cool move. I just want to show you this brilliant move coming up. White is totally winning here. If you block, there's an absolutely brilliant move here. Pause the video now or let the 5-second timer run. Can you see a brilliant move for white? The move is knight e6 check. If you take with the pawn, that is mate all of a sudden. All squares covered by bishop, rook, queen. Wow. So that means in this position you have to play a move like queen takes, but then you're just down anyway. So going back a few moves, I've just thought that was worth showing. Abdumalik gave up the rook for the bishop, take. Bishop d7, rook d1, totally winning. Let's see the turnaround coming soon. You won't believe this. Beautiful tactic. Bishop takes. Innocent move, isn't it? You just trade bishops, but it's game over for white. Pause the video now or let the 3-second timer run. Can you see a brilliant move for black? What a turnaround. Knight takes e4 check, winning the queen. Chess is harsh. The pawn is pinned to the king. Ouch. And the guy lost the queen. The guy lost the bishop. Rook drops back. Rook hits the queen, I mean. Thrown a check. Rook here coming in, game over. Queen can come in. The knight can also come in as well. Rook drops back. Thrown a check. King's just sidesteps, get out of a fork. Knight comes in anyway to hit the rook. Thrown a check. And then throw in another check. Pragg resigned. Because if you block with the rook, queen takes pawn. We actually pick up both rooks. So after this, let's finish it off. Check. Pick both rooks up. And cool mate coming up. We can go for this. I thought that's a nice one. Rook and queen cut off the lines. And the knight controls c5. Harikrishna against Wei Yi. Here we go again. Now we got one of the critical lines really. After e4, e5, striking in the center straight away. That's why in these kind of positions at the highest level, some players want to go knight f3. You might be thinking, well, what's the difference? It's actually to stop e5. Okay, well, what is such a big deal with e5? Well, lots of pieces could come off if black is a very good player. e5 striking in the center. Now, first thing I want to talk about is, well, these two options, pawn up or take. Both options are really bad. If d5, this is actually awful for black. You might be thinking, well, so what? White's just getting space. Knight hits the center, and now this cool move, b5. If you take this one. The center is falling, and if you take, check. This position is awful now. White actually has to move the king. You can't drop the knight back because you lose your rook. Take. So if you have to move the king, you can't castle already. So don't go for this. You cannot push the pawn. Another terrible option is to take. You might be thinking, well, what's the big deal? Even though the queen's come off now, both sides, as you can see from the green circles, both of us have double pawns. But the king is too weak. This knight can hop in. This bishop can come in. So let's say knight out, we defend. Thrown a check, we defend. We block, and now check. It's too dangerous. Everything. Every one of black's pieces is coming in the game with tempo. And white, well, everything is still on the back, really. You block. So many options for black to continue. Defend the bishop is one option. Break open the center, 1-2. Knight can come in. This pressure is so difficult to deal with. So going back a few moves, don't go for this. A really good option for white here is actually knight f3. Couple of options for black now. You can throw in a check. In this game, we're going to look at taking the center. Now, you can recapture, but Harikrishna, one of the top Indian players, plays bishop takes c4. So now it actually is a gambit for now. Remember, the best chess gambit that's not really a gambit is one where you get the pawn back very soon. Throwing a check, we block, take, and now knight c6, defending your extra pawn. Please note, black hasn't got all their pieces in the game, but white is very far ahead in development. The knight might come out to e7, f6, but queen f6 this time. If knight here, we get kicked away. Knight e7 is possible, but he didn't really like this option. Here. Knight e5, attacking bishop and defending, the game goes on. Not going to look at this. Let's go back a few moves. Wei Yi actually chose queen f6, b4. Look out for this pawn push in these kind of positions in your own games. If black has this extra pawn, you actually flick this pawn, move in. Really cool middle game idea. b4, sacking another pawn. Maybe it is a queen's gambit. What happens if take? That's my first question. White gets their pieces out very fast. e5, we hit the queen. Queen b3, we hit the knight. Knight can recapture soon. If knight back, rook e1. White's pieces are just in the game so fast. You've got to go knight h6 ready to castle. However, if you blunder with a move like knight a5, which is terrible, you go check. You pick up the knight. The knight has to retreat, and now e6. Really cool line here. I just wanted to show. If we take, the bishop can take, and then we take on b7. Take. The entire e-file opens up. Take. Everything is falling apart. Let's go back a few moves. In this position, really cool idea from Harry. Knight out. b5, hit the knight, it drops back, knight b3. Maybe the queen's gambit is not queen's gambit anymore because we get the pawn back very soon. Harry decides to trade queens off to get into this endgame. The green circles show the white knights are better placed than the black knights. The bishop is better. The pawns are further advanced. White has a nice edge in this endgame. a6, Wei Yi tries to get the rook in the game. Let's stop that, and now b6. Cool move here. a5. Trying to trade pawns in white's favour. Now after this capture, knight takes. That pawn might be under attack. Might be undefendable, I mean. First thing I was thinking was, why not c6, and then maybe you can take, maybe black's alright, but there's a brilliant move here, knight c7. If you go rook here, you take, and you defend the knight. If you go rook here, you push, and there's no good way to stop the queen. You have to play an ugly move like that, but then you're just down a bishop. Here, the knight can just come back, really. No. What a cool line here. So after take, bishop e6. Wei Yi, top Chinese players going for tactics. Take. Hitting the rook. Take. Hitting the rook. Take. Take. Overall, what's happened? White is up an extra pawn. Let's keep going. f5, take. Is it likely to be a draw? Well, we'll see. Pair of knights come off, take. And it's very important, if white wants to win this, got to keep the knight and the rook on the board. You can see this rook trade by Wei Yi. He's confident. If the rooks come off, very likely to be a draw. So Harry keeps the rooks on. Okay, let's keep going. Let's march up the pawns. Right, now what? Okay, we're making steady progress. White is the one playing for a win, steadily getting the pieces up the board. No time to take. Got to defend the knight first. Rook back, king back. Alright, check. Oh yeah, this is a key moment, because I was wondering, when Wei Yi moved the rook, I was wondering, well, why not take? Pause the video now, or let the 5-second timer now. Can you find an absolutely brilliant move for black? The brilliant move is knight takes h5 check. I've never seen a tactic like this before, where you actually win the rook from behind. Incredible tactic. Just goes to show these players are so sharp, even right into the endgame. King moves away, take, Maybe white can hold this, but I don't really want to play this kind of position. Beautiful tactic out of nothing. King goes back in order to stop that check. Check. Okay, now what? Well, we hit the rook. We do hit the rook. We hit the rook again, and now we're ready to take. And you might be thinking, well, there might be time to check. Attacking the f4 pawn as well. King drops back, hit the rook just in time. There's no time for black to take the pawn. The rook moves, and now just in time. Chess is tough. Chess is so close. Knight defends your extra pawn. We are 3 against 1. It should be game over, but let's see. Check. Pin. Check. And now brilliant move here. Class move. Absolute class. Because it looks like, well, both are under attack, really. You take, I take. Well, it might be a draw. It might be a draw. Brilliant move here from Harry. We defend. What a move. I bet Wei Yi missed this. Check. If you take, king here. And now g5 is mate. Rook moves away. What a cool checkmate all of a sudden. Class move from Harry. Absolute class. So h6 defend the rook. Knight e7. King retreats. Check. Rook h6. And now take 3 pawns. Up. Now what? Well, Wei Yi decides to give up the knight for a couple of pawns. Check. Take. Well, if that pawn is off the board, it's a draw. Get the knight in. Shouldn't be a draw. That knight should be able to defend that pawn. Really cool knight, actually. Stopping, really the important thing is stopping the king coming in. There's no way in. No way. Alright, check. Hit the rook. Okay. Check. Let's keep going. And now, class move here. The knight is actually in the way, so Harry moves the knight, and then you're able to promote. Knight e6. Because if you take the knight, then the rook will check, and then you promote. Just a decoy. Check. Move. Promote. Game over. And after knight e6, the guy resigned. Take. And then we can take with check. Game over. I hope this video has shown that one of the best gambits in chess is not even really a gambit, because you get the pawn back very soon. Then you have the chance to play a good game. Let me know in the comments, will you be playing the Queen's Gambit in your next game?